speaking about effective parenting on a tight schedule. The three things that I want to focus on tonight is how to spend quality time with our kids, how to get involved and stay connected in our children's lives, and how to build a support system all on a tight schedule. Okay, so I found an interesting statistic when I was preparing for this for the talk, and we used to spend a lot of time with the kids, and as Dr. Schechter spoke about, the world got busy, the demands got greater, technology was introduced, and things just got really busy. So since 1970, parents spend on average 22 hours less with their children each week. So that means we're effectively spending at least one day less with our kids than our parents were in the past. And this can lead to social, emotional, and academic difficulties with our kids, and we certainly want to try to avoid that. So I'm going to speak about how do we make the most of our time? How do we spend quality time with our kids? How do we make the most of them? Okay, so the first thing is we want to set aside time. Okay? If we set aside time and make sure that it's quality time, then that's time that's going to add up. We have our quantity time, but we also have our quality time. And that's very important that we have quality time. Our kids want our attention, and we'll make sure that they get it no matter however they have to get it. So it could be that if we give them attention in a positive way, they're going to take it, and if not, they're going to pull for it in a negative way. They're going to tantrum, they're going to pull at the bottoms of our skirts, they're going to just try no matter what to get, they're going to act out, they're just going to try negative ways to get our attention. So if we're able to give them our attention in a positive way, then we're actually freeing up time in our own schedule because we don't have to go through the whole process of disciplining them and dealing with them when they are acting out. So I just wanted to give two quick stories that illustrate my morning madness with my kids. And the woman in the video, I don't know if you saw it, she's in much calmer than anybody that I know in the morning. So the first one happened a couple of years ago when my son was a little bit younger. And I was getting ready for work, and I really thought, okay, I'm going to be late, I got to get ready, I only have a few minutes left. And there was music playing in the background. And he kept saying to me, Mommy, 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 dance with me, dance with me. And my first reaction was, no, I'm not, I have to get dressed, I have to go to work, I'm running late. And I hear myself saying it, and then, kind of what Dr. Schechter was talking about in terms of priorities, in my head I'm like, what am I doing? If I'm 2 minutes late to work, I'll be 2 minutes late to work. But he's asking me to dance with him, I'm just going to spend 2 minutes. And it actually felt like 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, but it was really 30 seconds of dancing. He was happy, I was happy. He left with me I was in a good mood, he was in a good mood. I got to work early, and it was just a very pleasant experience, and he really felt good about himself, and I felt good about myself. And I guarantee you that if I would have said no and continued to say no, I would have been late, which is kind of what happened to me last week when I worked one night a week late, and the next morning, my son, who's a few years older, said, Mommy, can you get me dressed? I had 10 minutes left. I was still getting ready, had to make my lunch, had to get out the door. I'm sure we can all relate to this. And Mommy, can you get me dressed? And I'm thinking, there's no way I can get him dressed. There's just no way. And I said no. And I started walking around the apartment getting ready, and he's running after me going, okay, now can you give me breakfast? Can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do this? And the babysitter's there. And I'm like, no, 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 no. And it ended up being that he was reacting, and he was tantruming, and he was picking on his younger sister, and I ended up getting out 10 minutes later than I wanted to do, and I don't know if I was late to work, but certainly had that rushed feeling badly, he was feeling badly, and I guarantee you, had I said to him, okay, I'll get you dressed, but we have to do it quickly, I would have been out the door and things would have been fine. We do have to set limits, but it was so clear to me that probably wasn't the time to set the limits, because I was working the night before, I knew where it was coming from, and so I probably should have addressed it. So he really was pulling for that negative attention, and it didn't free up any of my time. In fact, it made me later. So if we're able to set aside the time, not only will it be a positive experience and will make our kids feel good about themselves, it will also free up time in our schedule to do other things. So how do we spend quality time with our children? So what I do is I recommend setting aside, I didn't just say 2 minutes, but I say at least 5 minutes a day, a night. It really depends on your family size, with each of your children, to really set aside some time, and some time that's really in their control. And we call that, it's based on there's a treatment out there for kids with behavioral issues that focuses really on child-directed play for part of it. And that really helps build a positive relationship with the parents and the children. So it builds a good, warm, and nurturing relationship. And ultimately, it will lay the foundation for calm and effective discipline later on, which we're not going to get to tonight. So what I want to talk about is what to do during that child-directed time, where it's really their time. So you're setting aside time for them, and they're in charge of that time. Just going back to setting aside the time and finding the time, you have to know your own schedule. You have to problem solve your own schedule. You might have to alternate kids different nights that you want to set aside time for, that you can set aside time for. You might want to teach this to your spouse and have them do half your kids, and you do the other half of your kids. But just to make sure that there's some time that's really devoted to just spending time with the kids. Nothing else going on. So what do we do during that time? Okay, we play with them, we talk with them. With adolescents, it'll probably be more of talking than it is playing. And these are I would say, the 5 skills that I would say to use during this special time. You could try to use it, you generalize it to the rest of your life also, but really during this time to try to use these skills. So the first one is praise. Okay, praise your child's appropriate behavior, praise what they're doing. And we want to do this in a very specific way. It's called labeled praise, as opposed to unlabeled praise, where it's just we're saying good job or great job. They don't know what they're doing right. They don't know what they're doing good, so it's not really a teaching experience. We want them to learn what they're doing correctly, so they'll continue doing positive behaviors and doing it in a correct way. So you might say, you're sitting so nicely while we're playing. Or if you're talking to an older kid, I really think the advice that you gave your friend was a really great idea. I think that was so smart of you. So you want to be very specific about what you're praising. And you could even take it a step further and say what it shows you about your child, as well, what value they have. The next thing is you want to reflect back on what they're doing. So just an example of a little kid playing or drawing. Hey, mommy, look, I made a flower, and you want to reflect back to them, yes, you made a flower. So you're just showing, just that simple statement shows that you're listening and you're accepting what they're doing. You're not countering it with anything else, you're just letting it be, and you're saying, I accept it, you made a flower. Okay, the next thing is imitating, right? You want to imitate the appropriate playing behavior. This really gives the child the lead, it shows them that you're approving of what they're doing, and it shows that you're paying attention and that you're involved. So if you're playing blocks with your kid and he's building a tower, you might say, okay, I'm going to make a tower just like you're making a tower. Okay? They love the fact that they'll feel like $1 million if you're copying exactly what they're doing. Like, oh, mommy really, really likes what I did. Oh, that must be really good. Okay? The next thing that we can do that sometimes feels unnatural, but happens to be what I actually fall back on the most when I'm doing play therapy with kids, is you want to describe what they're doing. Okay, so you want to, again, a block example. So, oh, I see you're putting a red block on top of a blue block. You're really describing without judgment what it is that they're doing. And this shows that you're interested, and it shows that you're there. Plain and simple. No judgments, nothing, you're holding it with them. Okay, and the last one is enthusiasm and genuineness. Okay, we must be enthusiastic and genuine when we play with our kids or when we spend time with our kids, because they know when we're not. They're pretty good readers of when we're not. And it can be hard for us. It can really be hard. Some of us may not like to play, or we have 1,000,001 other things on our mind, or 1,000,001 things to do. But if anything, maybe we can connect with the fact, even if we don't like what we're playing or what we're doing, the fact that we're spending time with our kids, and let's try to latch on and be enthusiastic about that. So this is just some things to do during that special time that you have with your kids. What should we maybe not do during this time? And this, I just want to say, is really specific to that special time that you're having with them, because not only, but certainly, you might need to give an instruction or command at some point in your parenting career, but during this time, we really want to avoid it. Okay, and why do we want to avoid these things? Sarcasm, commands, criticism, questions, instructions, And commands could be direct commands or indirect commands. You could be playing with your kid, and just to go back to the block example, because I think it's easy to illustrate, you could say, why don't you hand me this, or why don't you do that? And that is leading them in a way, and it takes the control out of their hands. And it makes them question themselves, and it can really affect their self-esteem. So we really want to help build them in a positive way, and to avoid some of the more, I would say, negative things that they might feel during this time. Okay. And then when you do set aside time, disconnect. Really take the time for you and your child. Don't answer the phone, don't text. If you could do it, you close the door. If you have a younger kid running around, try to maybe make it a time that your spouse is home, or someone who's helping out is home, so that they could really step up and try to help minimize the distraction, or really plan around it. So try to do it when your kids are sleeping, and yes, some of your younger ones are sleeping. Some distractions are unavoidable, but as much as you can, try during this time to just disconnect from everything else and really be with your kids. So the next step to helping being an effective parent on a tight schedule is positive reinforcement. And what positive reinforcement does is it increases, we use it to increase the behavior that we're seeing, that we want to continue. So if we're able to use this to increase positive behaviors, then we'll spend less time on disciplining our children, and we'll make our schedule smoother, our kids feel great, we'll feel better, and they'll have a better self-esteem for it. Kids, more than anything in the world, and even the older ones, you might not realize it because they're maybe giving you attitude, but all they want is your praise and approval. They want their parents' praise and approval no matter what. I'm sure some of you sitting here in the room could think about it and think, oh, you still want your parents' praise and approval? And it's an important thing to remember, because we want to build our kids, and we want to continually try to give them that praise and approval as much as we can. So what do we want to do? Some examples of reinforcers are praise, a smile, extra time before bed, extra time with friends, special treat. And we want to use the when-then rule. When your child displays an appropriate behavior, then right away we want to reinforce the behavior. And it may be very, very difficult, because we may be in the middle of 1,000,001 things. But the reinforcer is the strongest immediately after the behavior that we like. Immediately afterwards, we want to make sure that we reinforce that behavior. Okay, and eat right, even whatever. And the other thing is that we can't wait for perfection. We want to reinforce in baby steps, in tiny steps. We see a little improvement, we reinforce, right? We don't want to wait for the perfect job. This will help shape the behavior. So let's say your child sets the table, right? And they forgot the cups, right? You want to say to them, you did such a beautiful job setting the table. I love the way you put out the plates and the napkins and the forks and the spoons and the knives. And you may want to leave it alone at that. You may say, you did such a great job, you're probably exhausted, I'll take care of the cups. Just letting them know. You might want to wait till later that night, or even the next time, with the learning experience of, okay, when you set the table, you put out the cups. But in that moment, you just want to reinforce what they did and what they did right. Okay? The reinforcer we should reinforce often, and also make sure that the reinforcers are reinforcing and motivating to our children. Because let's say your child, you're going to give them a special treat. Let's say you use that as one of your reinforcers, and you give them licorice. Let's say they don't like licorice, then it's not going to be reinforcing to them. So it needs to be something that they enjoy. Okay? Also, a reinforcer should be reasonable. Sometimes we try to think outside the box, and we try to, and sometimes we're so desperate for our kids to do what we want and to do it in a positive way that we're ready to give them the world. But it should really match the behavior that they're doing. So if a kid gets dressed one morning a week on their own, we shouldn't be giving them $100. Because it doesn't match. We're going to wear ourselves out. It's not going to, the kids are going to at some point wear themselves out. And we really want to just make sure that it matches behavior. Okay, and also just to remember that we get what we give. So the more positive responses that we give, the more positive responses that we'll get in return. Okay, so the next thing that leads to having a smoother household is having clear expectations and house rules already set into place, and not necessarily as you go. I know it says classroom rules, so it also helps for teachers in their classroom. Having a clear system of rules that will lead to a smoother run household. And how do we do this? So we recommend involving your children in the process, okay? Asking them for their opinion, asking them what they think some of the rules of the house should be. Kids are really honest, and they know what's right and wrong, and they know what they should be doing, and they also might have some things that they really want you to be doing. So we want to involve them in the process. Maybe sit down and have a family dinner or a family night where we're going to sit down and try to make clear rules. Okay, we're going to try to incorporate some of our kids' ideas, because if they have ownership over some of these rules and what we're doing, then they're going to want to do it, right? As opposed to if they're just being, okay, you do this, and you do this, and you do this, and you do this. Then they're like, okay, where's the fairness in that? Ultimately, parents have this final say. And it could be that you sit down and you say, okay, kids go, you come up with 10 rules, and we'll come up with 10 rules. And then you compare notes and see how things are going and see what you want to keep and what you don't want. Or you could just go around the table and ask them what their preferences are. And you want to place it visibly in the house, and you could always just refer back to it. So even if there are a million and one things going on, you just have to point to the cabinet or point to the refrigerator. And also you can have a preset system of rewards and consequences already put into place so that it's just automatic. There are no questions, it's clear, there are no questions, you stepped over the line over here, this is the consequence. Okay, come back in the game, and let's start again. You know, and the more that we do it, and the more consistent that we are, and I think that this goes for everything, the more consistent we are, the smoother things will go, because the kids will know what their limits are, what the expectations are. Okay, so the next thing that I wanted to talk about was just how do we get involved and stay connected with our kids. And I really just wanted to speak to some practical ways to include our children in our lives and how we can include them in how we can be included in their lives while still being able to maintain a busy schedule. Okay, so this may seem pretty obvious, and as good parents, we're like, of course we always take an interest in our kids, but it's really easy sometimes to overlook it. And so I just thought it was important to say, these are some ways that we really want to take an interest in our kids' lives. And it doesn't take long to do any of these things, but it does go a very long way. We want to greet them with a smile. Sometimes we take our kids off the bus and our little ones are running down the block and we forget to greet with a smile. It's okay, we can always go back and do it again and re-greet them a little bit and say hello again and smile and take an interest, or even say, you know, I was running down the block and I missed saying hello to you, so I'm gonna come back and say hello to you, and how was your day? Right? You want to give them a hug, ask them what they learned during the day, ask their opinion about things. And I think, you know, this is something that's important for younger kids, but also with older kids, especially. Ask their opinion. They want to feel involved. They want to feel like they're a part of something. Okay? This is something that, you know, it's easy making daily routines a time for learning, and also involving our kids in our daily routines can be quite difficult, because sometimes it's easy for us to just 1, 2, 3 quick, get what we need to get done. But if we involve our kids in the daily routines, we're teaching them what they need to learn in life. We're teaching them life skills. We can also incorporate things they might be learning in school. So even if we don't have time to necessarily sit down and, you know, chazer over a lesson with them, we can still include them in something. So let's say your kid's learning math, and you know you're cooking, and you say, okay, go get me 6 potatoes. Let them count out the 6 potatoes. If it's an older child and they're having maybe trouble with writing, and I just keep using kitchen examples, but I'll stick to it. So if you're in the kitchen and you're cooking and your hands are full, you could even, you know, be busy and let your hands be busy and say, you know what, can you write down, I'm making a menu for tomorrow night, can you write it down, and involve them in different ways and in creative ways, and helping involve them in the learning process. I know my kids love to do laundry, and it's very, very helpful for me when they collect everything and I can go be busy with something else, but still check back with them and see how they're doing and be involved together and doing something together, and it makes them feel like $1 million bucks. They feel great. If kids can help and feel like they are doing something in the house, and that, again, that the parents have this approval of them, then, I mean, you're going a long way, and you still get that quality time together and spending an activity together. Okay, so the next slide is that mealtime is family time. So mealtime is also hectic time, crazy time. But we want to maybe try to pick one. I know we have Shabbos and Yom Tov, which is nice, and maybe we can even try to pick a meal or two during the week, whether it be a dinner meal. Maybe sometimes it's easier to sit down if we have, you know, breakfast, depending on your households and what's easier for you. It's very easy to be busy with things while dinner is going on, but I would say during that time, put everything down and sit down with your kids. Spend time with them, talk to them, use it as an opportunity to ask them about their days, ask them about if it's breakfast, ask them about what's coming up in their days, what they're looking forward to, what they're excited about, what they're not excited about, what's scary for them. And maybe take turns answering questions, going around and having all the kids say something. I know when I was doing a parenting group, one of the parents said, we do roses and thorns. We go around and we say one positive thing and one negative thing that happened over the course of the day. You could use mealtime as a time to talk about family issues or things that are going on. If you can't, if it's too hard, I know some people who will take their kids out, take one or two kids out for a meal every once in a while, or go out for ice cream for a treat every once in a while. And again, it's a good bonding experience and a good time to be able to talk to our kids. Okay. As hard as it is with our busy schedules, we want to try to be involved in our kids' lives, and in school life, because that's where they spend most of their time. So it could be that we can maybe try to go on a class trip if we can. Sometimes it doesn't work out. If our kid is in a production or they're on a sports team or whatever it is, make sure that we're going to support our children and to either, as a parent volunteer, or to really go be, the support and to watch our kids in their extracurricular activities. We want to maybe find other ways to help, right? We can maybe volunteer to be a class parent, or make class phone calls, or volunteer for a fundraiser. If the kids see that we're taking an interest in their lives, they're also going to take a bigger interest in it, and they're also going to feel like, oh my gosh, it's really important to my mom, and it's important to me, and I feel good, and we feel good. Call your kids' teachers or principals and check in on them. You don't have to wait for parent-teacher conferences. You can find out what's going on. I'm almost done. Okay, thanks. Also, don't be afraid to ask for accommodation. If you call the school, if there are parent-teachers conferences where okay, you come in at such and such a time and you really can't make that time, ask for an accommodation to come in at a different time. Teachers are busy too, but the worst that they'll say is no. It's the same thing when you call a doctor's office or a therapist's office or whatever it is. They usually, the receptionist will just give you an appointment, and we feel like we're stuck, like we can't go anywhere, we have to make that appointment, and then we have to turn our lives upside down. We can ask for an accommodation. We can say, can we come a different time? Worst that can happen is that they say no. Okay. And lastly, I want to say that one of the key things to effectively parenting on a tight schedule is having and building a support system, and not to be afraid to ask for help. Talk to your spouses. Find out, let them know what you're struggling with. Try to involve them. No, we're going to time. If your spouse, maybe they can go to night theater a half hour later. Maybe that's not possible, but they usually come home in the middle of dinner, or they come home in the middle of bedtime and totally mess up your routine. Ask them to come home 15 minutes later. Talk to them about the issues that are going on in the house and use them as a support. Other supports that we might have, maybe our parents are very helpful in co-parenting. Maybe we want to share some of this with them and involve them. Maybe they physically help us, and maybe they emotionally support us. We call them, and we have siblings and friends, neighbors. If you can't get your kids off the bus and you need to ask a neighbor, call a neighbor. You'll do the same thing for your neighbor the next night. We need to build a support system. Rabbis, teachers, therapists, we're open and happy to help. So the last thing just to remember is that you're a good parent. Don't feel guilty about having a busy schedule. Be proud. Set a good example, and by also having a busy schedule and being able to maintain it and still have good quality time with your kids and being able to effectively parent sets a very good example, and your kids will appreciate you for it. So thank you for coming out tonight, and